All right, hello everybody. I think we're gonna go ahead and get this started. And I just want to check, am I coming through from a sound perspective? Back of the room can hear me? You good? All right, thank you. Well, look, welcome to Suneeta Asrani Kassan's celebration of life. Um, we're going to go ahead, obviously, and get the formal component of today's event started. Um, we're, I guess, everybody that I see out there, you all know me, but for those of you that may not know me, I'm Anil Asrani. I'm Suneeta's brother. And on behalf of our entire family, we'd like to thank each and every one of you from the bottom of our hearts for being here today to celebrate Suneeta's life. And I'd also like to thank those who were not able to be here today. We had a lot of people reach out to us and say that they're keeping us in their hearts and minds. And I do see some people standing in the back. If we need to get if we need to get some extra chairs, or if there's some extra chairs, if anybody's got a anyway, feel free to stand. But if you're comfortable, or if you want to take a seat, please feel free to. There were a lot of people that reached out to us that were not going to be able to make it here today, and they reached out to let us know that they are loving and supporting us all by keeping us in their hearts and minds today. Now, obviously, this is a unique celebration because on the one hand, we are grieving the loss of Suneeta, and on the other, we want to celebrate her spirit and memory. But one emotion that I know that is in ample abundance here today is a deep love for Suneeta and our family. Um, and that's really the emotion that we're asking all of us to focus on as we remember her light, which shone so brightly, her laughter, which was genuinely infectious, and her life, which would, while it was way too short, it was filled with love and adventures, many of which as I've seen the people come into this room, many of which some of you may have had the opportunity to share with her. And Blacksburg may very well have been one of the places where you shared those memories with Suneeta. And that's a huge part of the reason why we wanted to come back home to celebrate her life. Um, this town really raised Suneeta. It was here that she spent the formative years of her life, and where she forged lifelong loving friendships. And actually, Suneeta was making her way back home to Virginia because of the love that she had for the people and the mountains here. She was living in Stanton when she passed, and had often said that when she looked out at the horizon in Southwest and Central Virginia, she felt like she was being held by the mountains. And she found a lot of peace in the natural beauty of this state. So, in the spirit of communicating that love, several of us will talk about Suneeta and what her life meant to us, and then we'll share a video that my wife Laura put together using photos and videos that family and friends were kind enough to share with us for this event. And just a quick comment on what we're trying to do here today. As you can see, this is not a formal event. We're a pretty casual family, and Suneeta was indeed very casual. At times, she could kind of be too casual. So during this, you may find yourself wanting to laugh, wanting to cry, and everything in between. And we want you to know that's okay, right? That's what we're here to do. There are no right or wrong emotions today, and we have plenty of space, both in this room as well as outside, to just enjoy each other's company, and while we remember Suneeta. So please, during this entire event, I know we're all sitting now, but make yourselves comfortable. You're not going to disturb any of us if you get up and get a drink or anything like that. So please feel free to get up and grab drinks or food, and let's just enjoy this time together. I think you've probably found out how everything works, so I won't get into that. The only thing I'll say and Laura told me I should scratch this, but the only thing I'll say is that if you like a particular brand of liquor and it's not there, there is I think a Fuller bar down at the other end of the. I see. Okay, so if you're looking for something in particular, I think you can find it. And for those of you who want to, and we would definitely love to have everyone at least try to contribute to this. There's a blank book over here on this table with the flowers. It's a memory book, and essentially you can contribute to it at any time, whether that's a memory, or if you have a photo that you want to stick in there, or thoughts that you have of Suneeta, or you'd at least just consider signing it. We'd really appreciate it. It's something that we will cherish. So please feel free to take complete creative license there. There are a whole bunch of colorful Sharpies over there that you can use, and then I believe they've set up games outside, once we move past this, and there's plenty of room to walk and run. It's a really beautiful setting here. And so please take advantage of that while we're all gathered here for the next few hours. I think that's pretty much it as far as the welcome information goes. So first, what I'd like to do is welcome Christina Deaton Di Maria. Did I pronounce the last name correctly? One of those lifelong friends of Suneeta's that I talked about that began here in Blacksburg, and whose whole family, the Deatons, they were essentially a second family for Suneeta. Not only while she was growing up here in Blacksburg, but even as recently as when she was reestablishing her roots here in Virginia. So Christina, I'll ask you to come up.
As Anil said, we are here to celebrate Suneeta's life, but I do want to extend our continued love and support to Suneeta's family, who we know are deeply grieving over this loss. We're with you. We send our strength and our love to you now and into the future. I will try to adequately represent the feelings of the many friends who are here supporting Suneeta's memory, certainly particularly our childhood friends. I've been friends with Suneeta for 41 years. We met in 5th grade. Some of my fondest memories are in the Israni household, whose rules were a little more relaxed than my home. Not as chaotic as my home, but a little more relaxed. And we would discover seemingly exotic things at that time. The pot of oil that sat on the stove waiting to make some Indian dish that I learned to eat with my hands. And Mr. Israni doling out his advice, the most prominent being soak it, his remedy for everything. It's amazing he was a surgeon, given his faith in hot water. And Mrs. Rani, who never hesitated to give us very practical, no nonsense responses to our very silly, teenage problems. Mrs. Rani, your home was always open. We had so many parties there and sleepovers, but it was a really safe place to be, and gave us memories that I know that we have to this day, and we're so appreciative of that. And even today, your family giving us space to remember Suneeta together collectively. Thank you for that. Suneeta was considered a member of my family as well. She embraced the chaos of a family with 4 kids and a large extended family. We had a revolving door of friends and aunts and cousins, and all of whom who deeply loved Suneeta. As Anil said, in recent years, when she and I both returned to Virginia to live, she reestablished herself as Sister Suneeta, as my brother David, who's here, calls her. She was at endless, family dinners, holidays, supporting my children's activities. And we'll really cherish that extra time that I got with her in the last couple of years. Suneeta would have loved this. So many people gathered together in her name, representing the rich relationships that she built in all the communities that she lived. And I think that Suneeta, was so wonderful at building relationships across generations with people from all different walks of life and points of view. But I would imagine that what drew all of us to Suneeta is not so different from one another. I think it's impossible not to start with her beauty because it was visceral. And I'm not just referring to her megawatt smile and her dazzling eyes and mischievous eyes and her hair, whether it was the dark hair or the pink hair or the steel silver hair. Those I feel like were just portals to her totally unique spirit. She was warm, generous. She lit up a room. It was impossible not to be captivated by her. From a young child to, you know, her adulthood, you knew when Suneeta was in a room, the chemistry of a place changed. And so many people feel close to her, feel a special closeness to her because she was genuinely interested in other people's lives. She wanted to see life through your eyes. She listened, she paid attention. And I think that's why the loss is so deep, because whether it was years ago or just a couple of months ago, we all know acutely what it was like to be in her presence. And I want to say something that Anil touched on too, that Suneeta, and I want to say this strongly, she loved life. She had lows and she had struggles and she had darkness, but Suneeta loved life and she was a fighter. She was, you know, from a young age, an achiever. She was an incredible academic student. She was an athlete. She sang in the musicals. She always did her best work. She went on to be an entrepreneur. She was an incredible public servant for Minneapolis. She also worked so hard on her inner holistic strength, embracing anything that would make her feel present and alive, whether it was meditation or therapies or physical fitness. Suneeta loved life. She was not a passive person in this life. She did not passively live. She lived wholeheartedly. And I think that's really important to remember about her. She showed us in many ways how to live out loud and to be true to who you are. And I know that one of the places that we probably all have such collective memories of her is in nature. You know, for many of us, the mountains are the backdrop of our childhood, it was the conduit of our friendships. And it's where I think she felt very strong. She, you know, loved the endless possibilities that the outdoors gave to her. We knew that her love of the soil was a little bit deeper than ours, in that when we were still working at grocery stores and such, she was working at Blacksburg Feed and Seed and the Crow's Nest Nursery. She felt, I think, that the soil gave her a blank slate to create beauty and ever-changing possibilities. I have a vivid memory that I've shared with her family already, but of climbing up to the top of Mountain Lake and gathering soil that was going to be used as an impression in soft gold that her wedding ring was made out of. She wanted that soil to take into the next phase of her life with Dimitri and then Saul. The land was so important to her. But of all of the new possibilities and adventures that Suneeta went on, the most important one and the one that was gave her the most joy was undoubtedly Saul. I will never forget meeting Dimitri. I don't know if you remember this. We met halfway between Chicago and Minneapolis and Madison. And Suneeta was bursting to tell me that she was pregnant with Solomon. And in subsequent years, she would speak with such pride about the inquisitive, you know, kind, intelligent young man that you were. Some years ago, when you were a teenager, you all traveled, I think, with AJ at that time to Chicago. And Suneeta and I only had time for a brief breakfast. But as we were parting, she said, "Oh, please come with me to where I'm meeting Saul and the others at the museum. I just want you to see him." She just wanted me to see you, because she knew that even in a brief interaction, that I would see what was most reflective of her proud work. And you know that her pride and your intelligence and your maturity only deepened. She was so happy that Lily, your relationship had flourished, and she was so proud of the path that you were forging. and Anil, who she loves so much and that we can't think of. I mean, Mrs. Ronnie, congratulations for raising two children who are so beloved by every community they live in. I have no doubt. She was so impressed, as you know, with the man that you had become. She spoke so lovingly of Laura and what a center of the family and pillar of strength that you were, and how you were raising remarkable children in Bella and Oliver and Lily. You had an extraordinary aunt who loved you so much. And when we see all of you, we will always see her. When we part ways with someone, we really never know that it might be the last time. And I recall a line from a musical. Suneeta loved musicals. She loved the musical Chess. This has come up several times, maybe one of the cheesier musicals, but there's a great line that kept repeating in my mind that was, says, I'd give it all for that moment with you when we thought we knew that our love would last, but the moment passed without warning far too fast. And that's what I feel, that there was no warning. But my final goodbye with Suneeta was very quintessential Suneeta. We had been out, it happened to be my husband's birthday. We were out with Jeff, Laura Adams, who's another childhood friend, and her husband Drew. We've had a wonderful evening, laughing as only old friends can laugh. And as we were saying goodbye, well, I think it's an understatement to say that Suneeta was unfiltered, right? So as we're saying goodbye, she quickly whispers in my ear a very irreverent suggestion about how I should celebrate my husband's birthday and how make him feel appreciated. So I said, okay. And then she took my face in her hands and I took her face in mine, and we told each other we loved each other. And I remember pulling away, still laughing at her suggestion, and her just waving and saying, goodbye. And that's how I'll remember her, that beautiful laugh, that incredible smile, full of joy. And that's what we're celebrating, that unabashed love of life, her generosity of spirit, all that she has in her family. And we're celebrating here, as Anil said, in a place that she loved, in the mountains that she chose to return to, and that we all love too. I want to close just with a few lines from another song by Scott Miller called Appalachian Refugee. We've gone to see Suneeta and some other friends. We've gone to see Scott Miller just a few months ago. And it says, hear the voice speaking through the fog that lies between the ridges they call blue, the oldest river they call new. Bring all my children home to me, my Appalachian refugees. So, Suneeta, you're home. We're here with you. My daughter said to me recently, I can't stop thinking about Suneeta, and we're never going to stop thinking about Suneeta. She'll be in every sunrise, every mountain ridge. She's left an indelible mark on our hearts and on our lives. And we love her, and we love all of you, family, and are with you. And she was just an incredible human being, a light that lit and didn't stop glowing. So, thank you.
Thank you for that, Christina. That was the word beautiful doesn't describe it. We will now hear from Suneeta's son, Saul.
Hi. I can tell Christina really knew my mom well, because the first line I have written is, my mom was a light. She was so bright in my life. So many because you go to school so many days in your life as a kid. I just have the memory ingrained in my life of coming home with my mom. She would always be long done working, cooking in the kitchen. Just she'd always sit me down and just ask me how my day was and nod through and let me tell her. Um, I'm gonna try to read a couple words I have written that lead to some bullet points of just stories to start, trips we had, memories I had of her. And I have to also start by agreeing that she was a happy person. I truly believe that. She just got thrown too many curveballs just at once. She was a happy person. Uh, um, so my mom was like, she knew me better than anyone in the world. She truly supported me in success and failure, and she raised me so lovingly. Truly, I know we had an unconditional love. I can't believe I have to do this. It makes me sick that all I have left are happy memories, pictures, and the people that she connected us to. Um, and the lessons she's taught me, because my mom would really she would take life if it was something happy or sad or painful or just straight angry or something, and she'd always try to pull you out of the situation and like teach you something from it. Any failure I would have, she would encourage to not be ashamed of or hide or run away from, but to learn from, because that was a central thing that my mom gave me was learning from failure and living with the lessons rather than pain from failure. And that's, I guess, what I have to do in the hardest way now, living life. But I'm sorry, I'm kind of all over the place. I try to mostly think about the good memories, of which we had a lot. Um, I was lucky enough to truly enjoy spending time with my mom. I know, like, a lot of people don't get that. We just like being together and traveling. Sorry, I'm one of the happiest places we would go together. It was just this little river in Wisconsin that we would kayak on. Um, we would pack food and bring drinks, and I've been thinking about it a lot the last couple of months. Just my mom's face as she sat on her kayak going down the river, how peaceful she would be. And we would go across like a bend in the river, and she would look back at me because I usually be in the back, and she would smile at me just as she went around the curve of the river. And I've been thinking about that a lot. And I've been thinking about how she would call her dogs on the ledge. Mama, it's me, and that it's like stuck in my head. But it's a happy call. It just makes me sad. I'm really looking forward to when I can think back about our happy memories and be happy. Um, I have these cards that I didn't write them. My mom wrote them towards the end of her life. And from what I take it, it's notes about being happy. And my mom would always take notes about things she was learning about. She would slow you down if I was telling her about a new thing that I was excited about. She'd be like, hold on, let me get my notebook. She would start writing bullet points. That's why I feel okay about doing bullet points. uh, so I wanted to open with this, kind of messed it up, but there's a quote I'm going to end with, and four quotes that I wanted to begin with, but I'll just read them now. Um, she said, "Wise is an effort not to struggle, to be patient and dedicated to the present moment." Um, and she would bring that up a lot while I was growing up. The present moment. I think it's for a shitty way. It's because it's hard, but it is the only way to be happy. It's just really hard. Most people don't figure it out, but trying to do it at least is a good way to be happy. Uh, she said, "Truth liberates, not effort to be free." Because you could have a guy in jail and he could be freer than the guy working his job, like it's all mental, like, but it's a struggle because I don't do it. You probably don't do it, but um, joy comes from mindfulness. Um, I I think my mom was almost too mindful sometimes. She would get stuck in her head, which I think at the end was really what took her. But she taught me to do it, I think, in a more healthy way. Um, Sorry, I'm kind of just throwing chunks at y'all. Just thoughts. I don't know how to put my mom's life into words. It's so hard. I'll get to the stories now because that's easier. So there were two times in my life that I fell that kind of represent other times that I fell in my life. And two reactions my mom had to those falls that I would have. One fall, I fell in our back alley with some neighborhood friends and scratched my knee like really, really bad. Like I ripped my knee open. And it wasn't so bad that I had to get stitches, or maybe I should have, but they threw some gauze on it, told me I'd be all right. And for a couple of days I was. And then the gauze got stuck in my knee because it scabbed over, and the gauze became like part of the scab sort of deal. And so my parents, they had to rip it off. And it was like the gauze was like part of my knee. So it was like, and I was probably 4 or 5, and I did not want the gauze to come out of my knee. And I remember kicking and screaming and just in our bathroom at our house. And my dad telling me to be still, my mom telling me to be still, and then my mom or my dad told me to just look at my mom's eyes and see the love. And I remember just stopping and seeing just so much love, and just being still and letting them do it. And that was one way that when I fell, she would support me, is by giving me just that motherly, unconditional, just you could see it love. And I always thought of that memory when I would go through hard times in life. And now I think about it almost daily, just the love in the eyes of my mom and her looking at me. Um, but in a different way that my mom would give me love when I fell. This happened when I was probably like 9 or 10. We would rock climb together, and we would rock climb, and sometimes we would boulder, which is just rock climbing without a rope. And I was bouldering, and I went too high, and I was upside down on the bouldering wall without a rope, and I fell, and I fell onto my back at the climbing place, which is like it was mostly grown ups, and like I don't know, I was really embarrassed about falling. I wasn't very hurt because it was very padded the landing, and I was like, I wanted to leave right away. Um, And my mom thought I was hurt at first, and then I was like, no, I'm not hurt. No, she caught on that I wasn't hurt. She's like, well, why do you want to leave? And I told her I was embarrassed about falling and I wanted to leave, and she was like, "Oh, that's funny. Like, get the fuck back up on the wall." Like, and 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 I just at that point was like trying not to and beginning to cry, and she could be a tough, like she was a hard ass sometimes. She made me get back up on the wall and climb, and then I don't know, we probably climbed a little bit more. Maybe we left, but I just remembered that through life, and now I remember it every day. But just there was a balance between that, like just unconditional love and hard assness, and I think that's what I'm doing semi okay right now. You know, it's just love and hard assness. It's a good balance. Um, she loved to travel. She loved cooking. But she loved cooking for people. She hated dishes and she hated like the mundane tasks. She really hated the mundane tasks. She, things that were boring, my mom really hated, just like me. Um, I'm sorry. I just have one more quote. I love my mom so much. She loved me. I don't have much more to say than that, but I have one last quote. Um, this is something she wrote that just, I think it sums up her situation. Hopefully well. Um, um, in the point of rest, at the center of our being, we encounter a world where all things are at rest in the same way. There, a tree becomes a mystery, a cloud of revelation. Each human, a cosmos of in which richness we can only catch glimpses of. The life of simplicity is simple, but it opens up a book to us in which we may never get past the first syllable. Um, thank you. That's all I have to say.
I think Saul did a great job speaking to the fact that words fail us at these times. They certainly have their limitations, and that was something that I know I appreciated as I was thinking about my own words. And I know that in talking to my mom and to Saul, I know that we all really had a hard time with this. We'll now move to hearing from my mom, Suneeta's mom, Margaret Asrani. But for those of you who know her, you probably know her by Peggy. My mom is also going to speak on behalf of my father, Das. Unfortunately, his health is not so good, so he's not able to be here with us today due to the travel, but he wanted to be here, and we know that he's here in spirit.
I'm gonna try and be brave. I'm not gonna be elegant, but it goes.
Sorry, we're trying to make a little recording and so just want to make sure that
Okay. When I was pregnant with Suneeta, Das and I moved from Hull, Quebec to Edmonton, Alberta. It was a very cool, but we lived real close to the main library in Edmonton, and I was newly pregnant, maybe 3 months or so. And I didn't have anything to do, and I didn't have any friends, and I hadn't gotten a job yet. So I went to the library. And I looked up all these books. Some of the medical books are like big books, right? So when you open them, they're whole pictures. And I was exploring the illustrations in the book of the developing fetus. So every week I would go and think, okay, this is what she looks, it looks like. There were no such things as sonograms, and so I had no idea what it was. But I was praying. I made a deal with God. Anyway, you know, I don't keep that. Suneeta's father wanted a boy. He's Indian. What does he know? So, and he told me, you know, if you, I said, well, what happens if I have a girl? Because we'll just push it back in. I mean, these are his words, and I'm thinking, oh my God. Anyway, so just a quick sideline. I had this baby at 9'10". I thought that meant she was 9 pounds and 10 ounces. And I said, oh God. And they said, well, what's the matter? And I said, well, it's a big baby. She said, no, it's a girl. I said, oh, it's a girl. And my husband says he's gonna push her back in because she wasn't a boy. So they thought I was crazy. But anyway, it worked out okay because I'm a big woman. She was 7 pounds, 10 ounces, and she kind of just slipped out. So she came out perfect, and she had dark black hair, gorgeous eyes. She was a very big contrast to her brother, who I had 2 years, 9 months later in India. And he was 10 pounds, and he came out, and I thought this child should be pushed back in because he was just so funny. Luckily turned out okay. And so while I was in the library going through these pictures, I was listening to Nat King Cole sitting in one of those, I'm dating myself now. It was a bamboo kind of shell-like thing that you could sit in, and it was hanging from the ceiling. And so I was swinging in this gondola-like thing, and listening to Nat King Cole. So, like many years ago, we were in the car driving, and Suneeta, Nat King Cole was on the radio, and she said, yeah, I don't understand, but I really like this guy. I like to listen to his songs. And so it kind of gave me a chill. And I said, I think she's 20 years old, right? So she doesn't know I'm listening to Nat King Cole. But anyway, I said, well, that's because I listened to him your whole pregnancy. You know, I just listened to his mellow voice. It calmed me. And so, I mean, I'd learned that developing fetuses can hear when they're in utero, but here was the fact. I mean, I could prove it. And his voice was embedded in her brain. Then when she got to college, we're in college now, when she left for college and thereafter, we tried to spend Mother's Day together all the time. And one of those memorable trips to Madison, which I liked Madison, but it really wasn't. It was a college for Suneeta, that's for sure. She was going to take me to a play. So I said, oh, that's cool. Okay, so we get to this play, and it ended up being a play with a small audience, like in one of those little round, you know, you circle, the audience circles the play. And it was a woman, and she was talking about preparing pasta. But as she's doing that, she's taking off her clothes. And I'm like, okay, this is new. And she was stark naked for the rest of the play. And she cooked. She said she cooked better. You know, the whole process was how she cooked. And so she cooked naked. She cooked better when she was naked. And she then proceeded to invite us all to come up and have dinner with her. Which of course, needless to say, we didn't accept that. Another time she called home and said that she was going to the steps of the Capitol in Madison. Because on this one day, you could smoke marijuana if you stayed on the steps of the Capitol and you wouldn't get arrested. So I promptly told her that if she did in fact step off and get arrested, please do not call me. Pull out her AAA card and get bonded out. But I didn't want to know. But then we laughed because she may have done it, I don't know. Maybe Dimitri can tell me. Did she step off the steps? His lips are sealed. He was probably there with her. Okay, so after college, she married Jimmy and they had a son. And Suneeta was determined to have her son born on November 17th, which is her mother's. Okay, so I'm going up. I'm thinking we're going to celebrate Anil's birthday, and then this baby's going to get born. When I get to the airport, I see Anil. I don't see Dimitri. So I said, well, where's Dimitri? He said, Mom, hurry up. We have to get home. Suneeta's in labor. I go, woohoo, okay. So we get to the house and we're laughing and, you know, commiserating with her in her labor. And finally she says, you know, Mom, you and Anil have to leave. I said, excuse me. She said, I'm laughing too much and my labor is stopping and I'm having this baby too. And I said, okay. And so Anil and I left. We had dinner. We went back to his house, his apartment. And it's getting to be 11:30, 11:45, and this no phone call yet. And then I think Dimmy probably called around 12 or so after the excitement of what time was he born? Okay. Yeah, it was very close to midnight, that's for sure. But he did make it. So they both share a birthday, which is always very nice. I like that. And she was very happy that she was able to do that. And then, of course, it's Minnesota. It's the dead of November, and there's an ice and snowstorm. And I wake up Anil, he's supposed to work the next day, and say, "Come on, we're going to the hospital. We got to see this baby." And Kyoko and Eric were there, and we saw our first grandchild, which was wonderful. And he was red. He looked very cold, but he was in his mom's arms, and she had a big smile on her face. And of course, Saul was a joy, and she was so happy. That's amazing. My trips to Minnesota always involved projects because Suneeta and I, if we weren't involved in a project, then we were probably arguing and making each other cry because, you know, we're very independent women and we both said what we thought. And sometimes it hurt one another's feelings. And so I have moved more mulch, moved more boulders, and painted more things in her house than I've ever done for my own house. But we always were so happy and so thrilled that we had accomplished what we set out to do. And I can attest that my first duty and my only duty every time I did visit was Dimitri and Suneeta cooked, but I cleaned up after them. And Suneeta used every pot and probably would have gone to the neighbors to borrow pots to cook if she didn't have the right pot. So she loved her cooking. I painted her dining room red, and I thought she was crazy. I mean, you know, this was right at the beginning of when red was the color to paint. Anyway, but it turned out really well. Beautiful. And as I said, since we were both opinionated women, our visits could get testy. And a good visit was when neither of us were crying with hurt feelings, and we would report to the family. Nobody cried. And as I look back, we learned to mellow and to accept each other and look forward to time spent sharing ideas and skills to make things beautiful. And we had many plans to work together on our fall in the future. One of the points of contention with Suneeta was that I was a good Catholic girl, and she didn't mind the church, but she hated the rules, regulations, and she liked God, but she didn't like any of the rules, regulations. So we learned to accept each other. And and her philosophy was meditation, yoga, and golden circle. And I was partial to my Catholic upbringing and novenas. And so I have said many novenas to Suneeta throughout her life. And I recently read that the golden circle, I had to look this stuff up. I knew it was important to her, but I really didn't understand why. But I think it's an important part of Buddhism and her readings. And the gold symbolized enlightenment, purity of spirit, happiness, and freedom. All these things Suneeta strived for throughout her life. I say a special 9-hour novena handed down from my mom. And it's a wonderful prayer. It's gotten me through a whole lot and helps give the person it's being sent for the assurance that God is going to shower them with the grace to face any challenge. I've said, again, many novenas for her over the years, but I also knew that she wanted me to, or I wanted to incorporate her feelings too. And so I always told her that I was envisioning golden circles around her as I was singing my novena. And the circle, apparently, many people have been given this, attributed to this statement, but Hermes and Voltaire were credited with the quote, "God is a circle whose center is everywhere and his circumference is nowhere." As Suneeta's mother, my prayer is that she is eternally surrounded by a golden circle and prayers of family and friends on her behalf. And I believe God is a loving, compassionate God who forgives our weaknesses. C.S. Lewis says, to be a Christian means to forgive the inexcusable, because God has forgiven the inexcusable in you. She will always be loved and cherished, and of course, never forgotten. Her struggles are over. She was a gift from God, and we are truly thankful for the time we had with her. And may she bless it.
All right. Now it's my turn. so Suneeta, was not only my big sister, she really was my best friend. And as any younger sibling knows, you learn a lot from your older siblings. And Suneeta was no exception. From as far back as I can remember, Suneeta, much like my parents, was someone that I looked up to, and I tried to emulate. And she was always teaching me things, whether directly or indirectly, and that's mostly what I want to talk about today, what I learned from her. In our early years, it was simple things like learning to share our toys, or learning to respect one another and not pull each other's hair. I did actually have some back then. I know that there are people in this audience that can attest to that. But through all that, we were learning to love one another, which, to me ultimately means that we were learning to accept one another unconditionally. And I know we've talked a little bit about that today, the unconditional love. And that's the kind of love that that children are easily capable of. I see it in my kids, and it's a joy to see that. And that love manifested itself in certain things that we would do for each other when we were together. And we spent a lot of time together when we were young. In fact, when we lived on Gross Drive, right across from the Gallaghers and the backside of the Gwozdowskises, we shared a bedroom with 2 twin beds. And I still remember when she moved to her own bedroom downstairs. I'm sure my parents were separating us because we probably weren't getting to sleep on time, and we were probably, staying up laughing or being mischievous. We loved jumping from one bed to the other because it was on opposite sides of the room, and it was a stretch. You had to really try to get across to get to the other side. But I do remember when she left, and it was not comfortable for either of us. We'd gotten used to falling asleep talking to each other. Then when she left, I started having nightmares. You remember that, Mom? I can still remember the most vivid of those nightmares. I'd wake up into this sort of like dream within a dream, and I'd see on my closet. So there was a window over here, and there was a closet over here. I'd see this shadow of this witch on my back. It was really, really bizarre. I still remember it, but for her, she struggled too. At times, she would sleepwalk back up into what was now my room. But slowly we adjusted to that new norm, and then we shifted to a new norm when we moved to a new home on Cedar View Drive. Mr. Kubin is here. He was the neighbor right across from us with Anita and Dennis and Brian. But here, Suneeta started teaching me about being responsible and organized, because she definitely was at an early age. I was not. I think I was probably like in 3rd grade, and I was going to go to this week-long summer day camp, right? And Suneeta had decided, probably correctly, that I was unprepared. So she wrote she wrote a step-by-step list of what I needed to do. 7 a.m., wake up. 7:03 a.m., brush teeth. 7:05 a.m., take shower. And I didn't have to go to camp until, I don't know, 8:30 or something like that. But somehow she filled that time with a roadmap for me to be ready every day. And it worked. And, I didn't have to follow her instructions, but I did because I trusted her, and I knew that she knew better, and I knew that she was looking out for me. I also remember around that same time that she went off to a week-long sleepover camp. So she was gone. And so I was alone again. And I got scared, just like I was back at Gross Drive. We were in this new house. And when she was there, our bedrooms were now right across the hall from each other. It wasn't separated by a floor. And our parents' bedroom was on the top floor, and we were way down in the basement. But if I got scared, I could whisper, Suneeta. And she'd be there, and we got back to our old routine of falling asleep talking to each other. So when she left for this sleepover camp, I really didn't like being in that new house so far away from my parents without her. I learned that I needed to know that she was close by. Then as we got into middle school, she taught me to use my mind. Christina mentioned that she always did really well in school, and I'm always looking for ways to compete. So, our report cards were always a big deal in the house, and a way that we could earn, some kind of reward from our parents, like going to Sal's Pizza in Radford, or the old Baskin Robbins for ice cream. Or best of all, we get to travel to the big city, Roanoke. And we get to go to the fanciest restaurant of all time, Red Lobster. So I try to pay attention in school so that we both got good grades and we could get the best chance to get the big prize from mom and dad. And I usually did okay, but I never did as well as Suneeta did. Then we moved, then as we moved from middle school to high school, she started competing in sports. So I started competing in sports because more and more I knew I wanted to be just like her. During that time, I am convinced of this. She was the one who taught me to be weird, which is something I still very much appreciate in other people. It was what attracted me to Laura, my wife. And it's the good weird, right? Not the bad weird. I mean, you know the difference when you see it. So Suneeta and I had these nicknames for each other, and it was the same one. Not that we weren't, creative enough to come up with different ones. I think we just liked calling each other the same thing because it felt like we were one and the same. Bumbo, or Bumbi was the nickname. And we had this crazy song we made up around that nickname that we would sing when we were feeling weird, and we would just laugh and laugh about how silly and weird we were. And in high school, I'll never forget this. We would check in with each other at various times of the day, and we would do what we called book checks. All right, so this is where we tell each other if we had a visible booger in our noses, because nobody else would tell you. Your friends would just let you walk around with it. Just so we'd whisper, "Oh, check," and then we'd tip our heads back just slightly, so that the other person could check, but it wasn't obvious. At least we didn't think it was obvious to anybody else. And then if there was one, we'd say, if it was one on the left nostril. This really was life with my sister. She was fun. She was funny as hell. She was beautiful inside and out. We've all talked about this. She had a real zeal for life and exploration. And around that time in high school, she also opened my mind and helped me appreciate the arts. This part is actually a lie, but because that appreciation for the arts didn't actually come until a little later, and that's because she was really, as Christina mentioned, she was really into these musicals during high school, like as she would say it, Les Miserables, and Evita, which I'm convinced she got all from Christina's house. And of course, there was no such thing as AirPods back then. All you had pretty much was like a Walkman, which wasn't great. So she would blare, and I mean blare, "Don't Cry for Me, Argentina." The whole downstairs would be, "Don't cry for me, Argentina." So it really was, I think, every morning as we were getting ready for school. And I obviously I literally have that chorus imprinted in my mind to this day. And I do every now and then bring it out at the house to embarrass and torture our kids. But seriously, she was amazing. She excelled in academics, athletics, and then performance. I remember a play that she did, which was called Joshua, and it was done by, I guess, formerly known Ann Disler. I knew her as Ann Disler, but Anne Goethe, I think is the way you pronounce her last name. It was a controversial play at the time because it was about suicide, coincidentally. Anne was definitely ahead of her time in raising awareness around this. It was about teen suicide. And Suneeta was amazing up on that stage. I remember thinking, oh my gosh, how much courage it took to be up there in front of all those people. And that this was definitely something I would never be able to contemplate back in those days. But I just admired her so much for being able to go up and do something like that. And also during high school, she left me again by deciding to live abroad in France for summer. I couldn't comprehend that courage. I mean, France. I was just getting comfortable going to Franklin County. So, you know, when she left home for college, she went all the way to Wisconsin. And that was really my first solid realization on how much I missed, you know, her and just loved having her and her bright personality around. When I went to college, I also went somewhere that seemed far away that started with a W. I went to Williamsburg. That was what I was comfortable with. That's about as far away from home as I was comfortable going at that point. But while she was in Wisconsin, I got the courage one summer to go to Madison and live in a house there with her and the roommates and her and her friends and Dimitri. We took a road trip. Dimitri was a boyfriend at the time, and they took me to Chicago one weekend. That was the biggest place I had ever seen, and I was just gawking at everything. And I remember seeing, you know, this gay pride parade for the first time in my life, and that was the summer of 1994. I had never seen anything like this, but again, that was Suneeta actively helping open my mind to a larger world, helping seed in me a loving mindset toward people, a curiosity, a drive to always be learning and exploring. That's the kind of person Suneeta was. And that's the kind of big sister and best friend that Suneeta was. And after college, she went even further away from me with Dimitri into the remote villages of India, and lived in huts where mice and rats ran across the ceiling. I've got letters from her describing this. I found them when I was digging through some stuff. I'll have to share with you. And I mean, and you can guess where these mice and rats that run around the ceiling, you can guess where their droppings are falling, right? I mean, it's just like, so like she was living in a totally different world. They were doing agricultural economics and rural sociology, as I recall, which is what Suneeta got her degree in at Madison. In comparison, after college, I went to, you know, I went from Williamsburg all the way to Charlottesville. I didn't have the kind of zest for life and new experiences yet, but she just seemed to thrive on them, and I was learning to appreciate that. You know, by watching her, you know, do these things, my courage grew, and then ultimately she ended up coming back to the United States and ended up moving to Minneapolis, which is where Dimitri grew up. At the time, I was working in Charlottesville, but I really wanted to be closer to them. I remember so much so that I remember driving all the way up to Charlottesville to Minneapolis and back just for a weekend, just to surprise them. I could only stay for Saturday because it took all day Friday to get there and it took all day Sunday to get back, but I did it. And ultimately, I ended up following Suneeta to Minneapolis because just like when I was a kid, I felt like I needed to be close to her. And I really wanted to get to know Dimitri too. And during the years in Minneapolis, I learned that I liked living in a decent sized city, and Suneeta took on new adventures, this time familial adventures. She got married to Dimitri and they had a beautiful boy, Solomon. And he and I do share a birthday, which is really cool. So I learned what it meant to become an uncle. And with the birth of Saul, Suneeta and Dimitri gave me the opportunity to learn what it meant to take care of another precious human being. And I know for sure all the time that I spent with him helped me adjust much quicker to taking care of my own kids once they came along. And as Suneeta and I both, you know, had our families and got busier raising our kids, we did see less of each other, of course, but, you know, being in the same city, we still saw a lot of one another. And during that time, I learned to build strength in my family. And probably for the first time was learning to become independent. But Suneeta and I were both stronger because we knew we were there for each other. And our relationship kind of came full circle by coming back to both of us focusing on the simpler things again, like sharing and respecting each other. Only this time it wasn't our toys or personal space, but it was a similar process that when we were little kids, we were learning to love each other in a new stage of our lives, sharing our thoughts on parenting and partnership, but continuing to accept each other unconditionally, even as we started to become our own people, as we became adults with, you know, different opinions on certain things. But Suneeta never lost her love of traveling to new places and meeting new people and having new experiences. And a few years ago, she left Minneapolis to come back to Virginia. And Laura and I have played with the thought that, after our kids are off to college, we'd find our way back down here too. But now Suneeta's gone. Someplace where I can't. Someplace that I can't follow her. So now she's teaching me to be okay without her. And thankfully, I know that while I will miss her with everything that I've got, I'm going to be okay, because I'm fortunate to have so many other people that I'm close to, who I need and who need me, my family and my friends, a lot of whom are in this room. And for that, I am not only very lucky, but also very grateful. So I think it's clear that Suneeta had a passion for new and exciting opportunities, but she did have something else. She had these intense periods of darkness that would descend upon her. From as early as 17 years old, she suffered probably a half a dozen times in her life that I'm aware of, from periods of crushing anxiety and depression. And she really only let a few people see or know that side of her. And maybe even then, not completely. I think it's safe to say that she did not like the feeling of being vulnerable. And to be honest, we as a society aren't as good as we can be at dealing with or admitting that some people sometimes need more help than others when it comes to mental health and wellness. It's really tough to know how to best support them. And while these times when she suffered will never define her, because as Saul said, she shone so brightly during the vast majority of her days, it ultimately was one of these dark times that took her away from us for the last time. But I struggle, despite knowing that we will never know exactly why, I struggle to understand, why she decided to end her life, because she loved all of us so deeply and she knew she was so deeply loved. And after thinking hard for the last 2 months, the only thing I can say for sure is that she had a day where that darkness came to her, and it came on intensely, and she couldn't get out from under it. She couldn't see around it, over or past it. It descended on her and overwhelmed her, and ultimately she could only see one way out. And that's scary for our family in particular, because when my dad was about her age, he had the same darkness descend upon him, and we almost lost him the same way. I was the same age as Saul today. And the reason I'm bringing any of this up is because, in part, it helps. It helps to get it out. It helps me accept what's happened as real, because, in all honesty, this feels completely surreal. But in larger part, I'm talking about this because we often don't, or we don't feel like we should. And I really don't think that's helping anybody. So, so many people have responded to our announcement that Suneeta took her own life with their own stories of loved ones who lost their battle with mental illness. And it's for that reason that we've asked Caroline Stewart Mullins, she's waving in the back of the room, proud Blacksburg High School alumni of 1992, who works for New River Valley Community Services. We asked her to join us today because we've got the memory book set out, and then Caroline has set up some resources and information about suicide awareness for anyone here who knows someone who's struggling. Caroline teaches suicide and mental health first aid classes to various community members, and would be glad to provide anybody here with any information you might need regarding coping with suicide loss and or supporting a loved one who is struggling. So if you'd like, please, feel free to chat with Caroline. And Caroline, thank you so much for being here with us today. We sincerely applaud and deeply appreciate the important work that you and your organization do. So just to wrap up, even in death, Suneeta's continuing to teach me things. I'll just name three. One is that vulnerability is a strength, not a weakness. The ability to let someone know that you're hurting and that you need love, help, support, or whatever you want to call it, is something that I know I can be better about. And I've been getting a lot of practice these past couple months, and I've been getting a lot of support too. So it's paying off. Two, I'm learning how to cope with loss and be able to be simultaneously vulnerable and strong, so that I can help support my loved ones who are also going through this. And the third thing that I'm learning from Suneeta is that the life that we have is a gift. It's a precious gift, and yet it's a fragile gift. And the relationships that we have in this life, as evidenced by all the people who are here today in person and in spirit, are priceless. And the quality of the time that we spend with each other is probably the greatest gift we can give to one another. And it should not be taken for granted, because there are no guarantees that we'll always have plenty of time with one another. So in light of all that, I am going to ask all of you for your help as we celebrate Suneeta's life today, and by helping our family and each other grieve and celebrate her memory. And honestly, I think the best way that we can do that is just by being our genuine selves, letting whatever emotions come, and just enjoying the time that we have with each other today, loving and supporting each other. So thank you again so much for being here today to do that with us. I hope it's clear how much that means to me and our entire family. We are now just going to set up the video